All right, we're live with another Malts with Mates today, and this time we've got Danny Dyer, Global Brand Ambassador for William Grant & Sons. Danny, mate, how you doing?
That was a perfect time to take a sip of whiskey, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm good. I'm very, very well. How are you?
Yeah, good. You know, I had some whiskey as well while you were saying that. I'm doing pretty good, you know. Like, I'm not going insane. Doing these videos is helping me to keep the sanity under wraps, I think, which is good. So that's
You've done quite a few of these videos now. Like, what gave you the sort of like inspiration to start doing this? Or was it because you were absolutely mental and you shaved your head into a mohawk at the start that you thought, I probably should see more than just myself?
I should point out, firstly, the mohawk was a fantastic idea. I love the mohawk. I would go back to it. I had some strong opposition to the mohawk. I really thought you were drinking from the bottle of whiskey just then as well. I was like, Christ out.
No, I have beer as well. This is Swedish beer. I'm in Sweden just now. This is a Swedish lager. I'm on the East Coast, but this is from the West Coast. And you see it has this thing that's like ecologist, if I can get that right. Everywhere in Sweden is just super good for you. They're really clever about what you eat, what you drink. Like it's the exact opposite to Scotland in eating predominantly deep-fried beige food. So I might actually lose some weight when I'm out here.
Fucking nice. So what are you doing in Sweden, mate?
Well, I was in my flat in Edinburgh, and I was working away doing my thing because I used to be an ambassador and travel the world, right, as you know. And then I sort of got stuck in my flat after this whole COVID thing, and I was just sitting doing assignments at home. Doing my projects, became more of like a brand manager marketing thing, which was fine as my girlfriend was there, Angelica. She's from Sweden, so she unfortunately got fired through COVID. She was hospitality. So she was like, I'm just going to go back to Sweden. I was like, yeah, it makes sense. I'll be fine. Famous last words. I now realise how much I thrive on people. Like, as you know, I love people anyway. But see, after a few weeks just sitting in my flat and working all the time, I became quite bitter. I was quite a nasty wee guy, you know, not intentionally. I was just like, I'm bored of this, don't care about that. And then I finally saw my mum, who I hadn't seen in about 6 months, and my brother, and suddenly I was like, bing, what am I doing? Like, I should travel to Sweden for like 5 weeks. I can work from Sweden, I can get some cool content, and I can go out swimming and kayaking and being with her and her family. So I got here a few days ago, and it's been a massive help for my head. So that's why I'm drinking Swedish lager. We literally just made cinnamon buns. It's been the most Swedish day ever, mate. We went out in the morning and we got like chanterelles, right? These funky mushrooms. Taste amazing on toast, by the way. And then we went picking for berries like blueberries, raspberries and blackcurrant. Then we came back and our mum and dad were there with like crisp bread and this weird caviar patty stuff. It has been the most Swedish day, and I love it. I also thought the only good thing to come out of Sweden was Henrik Larsson, but apparently they've got a lot of good food and culture and nature as well. So yeah, I'm having a blast, mate.
Fucking hell. So, all right, so east coast of Sweden. My Swedish geography is bloody awful. Can you give me like a reference point? What's the closest distillery to you?
No, because mine's a shit as well. I have no idea where Macmira is. I honestly have no idea. I get into Stockholm, right? So you land in Stockholm or Landa, and then you take a train to a place called Norrköping, which actually, it was 2 trains. Oh, there's another story. I know you've probably got questions to ask me, but I'll just keep blabbing on. I got into Sweden, right, and fantastic time. British Airways, thank you. Brilliant, no problem at all. I get there and I have to buy a ticket from Arlanda, Stockholm, the airport, and I have to get from there to Norrköping. That's about 3 hours on a train, but the trains, just like in Scotland, aren't working properly. They've got some train works going on, so I have to take 2 trains. I start talking to this guy and going, right, I need to take this train to Norrköping. You any idea how I do this? And the guy's like, yeah, just use the ticket machine. The ticket machine's all in Swedish, right? And the guy wouldn't help me. So I ended up like picking some sort of weird first class ticket. I've got 5 minutes to change train. I was just losing my mind. But thankfully I was on the first train, and this really lovely Swedish woman who's one of the conductors came up, and she was like, don't worry, I'll sort you out. I know where you're going. So about 3 hours on a train, we get to this place called North Shopping, and then Angelica and her cousins pick me up, and we drive for about an hour and a half right out into the countryside in the forest. I swear I was like a sacrifice or something, you know. I thought it was all just a big joke. It's like, she's been with me for a year, we say that we love each other, but I'm just about to be sacrificed to some sort of pagan god in Sweden. But we get there, and then she shows me around. I'm like, this is brilliant, this is beautiful. So either they're fattening me up for the sacrifice, they eat me after I have all the cinnamon and cardamom buns, or I'm actually in here and I'm not going to get killed, which I'm hoping is the case.
Like cinnamon and cardamom, that's like seasoning for you, right?
Yes. So I literally was just making buns before I got here. That's how cool and I am. I'm sitting 1 minute doing a talk on whiskey, another minute I'm baking Swedish goods. Yeah, we went down and we made vanilla buns, cinnamon buns, and cardamom buns, and it's basically like they actually made vegan buns, right? It's crazy. They taste amazing. Nothing against people who are vegan. I know you can get tasty vegan food. But you make it into a big sort of like rectangle, right? And then you douse it in butter. This is when I knew it was going to be a tasty treat, you know. I just put loads of butter on it. And then I put cinnamon in mine, and our mum put some blueberries in her. And then you just kind of like roll it. You kind of twist it, right? And it gives it that wee funky pattern. And then you make a wee knot, and then you sit it in the oven. So yeah, we just made, it must have been about 100 of these buns that we've just made. So the place smells amazing. I'm smelling like cinnamon, cardamom and blueberries, and then drinking this like ale cast, this Grant. So I'm loving life right now.
It's great to see you're still representing the brand out in Sweden, drinking your Grants and showing it off on screen. We do love Grants, by the way. Grants is a great whiskey. Please sponsor me. No, it's awesome shit. But you've traveled a ton in your role. Like, you've done 30 plus countries or something in the last 18 months or 2 years. Yeah,
so 2 years. I actually done, I think it's 33 countries in 2 years. I didn't realise until I was my first time in New York. I was there with my old brand manager. Her name's MJ. She's an Irish lassie. And we were sitting having some food. Now, I was only going to New York. This sounds so wanky, and it kind of is, but it's true. I was only in New York for a sort of leadership course on how to deal with brand ambassadors. Now, I had 3 options for this course, right? I could do this leadership course on how to deal with brand ambassadors in London, or I could do it in Singapore or New York. So, unfortunately, it just so happened I was busy at the other 2, so I had to go to New York. So I very luckily went to New York. I met up with my old brand manager, MJ. Went to this amazing place where we're having this great food. And she says to me, she goes, how many countries have you been to now? I goes, I actually don't know. I must be like 10 or 15 or so. And she's like, Danny, bollocks, you've been to way more than that. And we sat and we figured it out. And I think it was just over 33 countries that I'd been to in 2 years, which is weird to think about.
No, I love that. I mean, what's the country you went to that was like an unexpected surprise? Somewhere that you were thinking, oh, this is just going to be another day in the job, and you got there and you're like, fuck me, this is awesome.
Do you know, I think there's been a few. I think the first one that was the biggest shock was Lebanon. I thought I was going to get shot or something over in Lebanon, right? Because we hear all this stuff in the news, and it's propaganda or news or whatever you want to call it, right? I was freaking out about Lebanon. Oh, Glen Talkers, that's the Gordon Nick Fail 1993 or 91? 91 Glen Talkers, that's a good dram, that.
91, distilled the year of my birth and bottled the year I finished high school.
Yeah, that's a cracker. That's a good dram. It's a G&M, right? Gordon and McPhail. It's a beautiful dram, that.
Sorry, Lebanon.
No, sorry, I get distracted. So I went to Lebanon. I have never been to a place with such good culture and people and party in my life. Like, they were just living like every day was their last. And also, do you know what was really weird, right? So I'd worked in hospitality, me and you both. When you work in hospitality, especially in the UK, like, you do get a bit of respect, but not a huge amount. You know what I mean? You're sort of like, it's not so bad as people clicking your fingers, although it does happen. It's sort of like, you're here to pour my drink or serve my food. See, in Lebanon, these people are really looked up to, and it takes them a long time to get to the stage of like being a bartender or a cocktail guy or a server. People love them, and they treat them with so much respect, and it just kind of opened my eyes as to how we know how great hospitality is and what we did, but for other people to acknowledge that and respect that, yeah, it was a really, really cool night. So I think Lebanon was the biggest shock. I think another big shock would have been in Kenya, in Nairobi. I'd actually, I'd travelled from like Tanzania, like this old school way in this weird little buggy car thing for like 14 hours. I was going past like these people in the desert, they're like Swahili with the goats and all the colours and everything. Africa's a fucking great place. It's a really, really beautiful place. And the people are just so warming and lovely, and I just did not expect it, mate, honestly. I'm from Glasgow, I'm a Scottish guy. I hadn't travelled much, so in my head I was like, oh, third world country and this, that and the other, and I was totally wrong, you know, and rightfully so. I had an amazing time. I met some really, really cool people out there, and by God, they love their food, and they love meat. They have this crazy thing on Sundays where you're just going to this massive barbecue with hundreds of people. Most of them are hungover. They're watching the sport. You're sharing beers with them, and there's big goat legs coming across, and what a place. Yeah, so Kenya was fantastic. We have a great team out there. Big shout out to all the team, Olivia and Karaoke and everything out there. They're amazing. So yeah, I think probably Lebanon and in Africa, a lot of places in Africa have surprised me. I think they're the biggest shocks for me.
Nice one. I got to ask, did you get to try, because this came as a shock to me, I tried this at the end of last year. Did you get to try the Lebanese whiskey while you were out there?
I did not. I did not get to try the Lebanese whiskey, no.
There is one Lebanese whiskey. I found it in, Milroy's in London, in Soho.
Yeah. I didn't even know they had a whiskey.
Well, I didn't either. I was sitting there having a couple of drinks, chatting with some people, and if you've never been to Milroy's, and we love Milroy's, you go in and they've got this huge, all the shelves behind the bar. There's 3 or 4 shelves, something. Up the top right is kind of their world whiskey section. It's all this stuff from all over, and in the very corner was this clear bottle with this clear labeling. I didn't recognize it. I asked them to bring it down, and asked what it was, and they said, we don't really know. It's Lebanese whiskey. And it was called, I think it was Athyr, Athyr. I started researching this stuff, man, and it's all Lebanese. It's Lebanese barley, Lebanese oak. Apparently they have great oak in Lebanon for the wine, but they just use virgin Lebanese oak. 3 years, they're 3 years old, and virgin Lebanese oak, cask strength. It hit like a beast.
Yeah.
But it was so incredibly tasty. It was so different as well. I've never had anything using that oak and that. They were using old Rachi stills, like tiny, like a cross between a cognac and a whiskey still. It's this tiny wine and Rachi distillery that's been going for like 200 years or something. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this is fucking amazing. The story is so awesome. And I think there were 150 bottles released, and I still can't get my hands on one because it's all sold out everywhere. But the next time they do a release, mate, definitely jump on it.
I need to check it out. They must be such a small production, and what an insane cask to put your whiskey into, a virgin oak. Because I'm sure people that watch this, they know about whiskey, they're probably geeking out, right? I'm assuming that, but I could be wrong. Virgin oak is a fresh cask that has just been charred. So when you put it in there, we've tried virgin oak. It's something I do when I'm doing tastings right now, because we have Grants Triplewood, and people are like, what the hell is Triplewood? And I'm like, Triplewood is these 3 casks, and I'm like, you know what, there's no point in geeking out about this. Let me just let you try each of the casks. And one of the samples I give people is a 3-year-old virgin oak single malt at about 67%. It's dark as night. It's a really, really dark colour, but you smell it, and you can almost taste the spice when you smell it. It's dry, it's oaky, it's tannic, it's intense. It is a total hit to your body, which I like. I like that big hits, that big slam that you get from it. So I would love to try it. And I would love to see what happens after a little bit of water as well, because it tends to, some of the sweeter notes do sometimes come out, depending on your barley and yeast and all that other stuff. I won't geek out too hard. But yeah.
To put into context for you, it was insanely spicy. And when I added some water, it tasted, those Swedish buns you make, and I know the style you're talking about, it tasted like they were filled with cinnamon and pear. Oh. That was like the two big notes I was getting off it. Just amazing. That I did a review on that, which is weirdly enough the most read whiskey review on my website.
Because like it's so weird, man. Probably because it's so weird. Like, if you're going to do whiskey reviews, right, and a lot of people do whiskey reviews, and it's good. I much prefer this sort of medium, right? I like sort of like the back and forth and the stories. You know what I'm like, but if you're to do a review on most normal whiskies, I probably won't read it. I probably won't be that interested, because it's really funny when you're explaining the taste of something. It's like if you go abroad and you eat a really nice dish, you're like, this is fucking pointless. Why am I telling you how good this dish is? Because you had to be there. And I kind of get that from reviews. I've pissed off a lot of people just by saying that, but it's true. It's how I feel. It's just an opinion. We've all got one. However, if you do a review on a crazy Lebanese obscure distillery with virgin oak and I will 100% be behind that. I will want to try and find that whiskey, and I'll read that review. So that's probably why you've got so many views on it.
Well, I will say I agree with you. There's every man and his dog has a whiskey blog nowadays. I like what I do because I like focusing on the guys that come from Lebanon, Estonia, Belgium, Lithuania, the guys you don't associate whiskey with these countries. But also, like, when you're reading a review, if someone just has tasting notes, that's like, well, that's kind of boring. I want to know about what goes into the bottle itself. Like, tell me about the distillery. Tell me about this whiskey itself. What's gone into making it? That's the most interesting part of a review I've always found. So, Jesus, I sound like I'm on my high horse here. But when I read reviews, if someone's just got tasting notes, I'll probably just click away, because it's like I want to know. I want to know the people surrounding it, because the whiskey, I'm sure the whiskey's great, but I want to know the story about it. If you tell me that this comes from like a German castle that's been standing for 1,000 years, I'm fucking interested. I don't care if the whiskey's shit. But if you just give me tasting notes, it could be the best thing in the world, but I'm like, well, I don't really care. It's just I fully get it. Like, I'm way more invested in a story. That's how I get into whiskey. Like, I was 18 and got offered a job at Abbott Distillery. I hated whiskey. My first experience with whiskey is when I was 16 years old. And the boys were like, well, you need to get some alcohol. And I remember going into my father's cupboard and I found this really, like, it must have been a 1.5 litre bottle. Green bottle with a yellow label and red letters, 2 big red letters on it, J and B. Never ever could touch J and B again. The thought of it makes me sick. So I take this bottle. It's half full. I'm sure Dad won't notice. 16, thick as shit. Still am. And then we go to a place called Rothes. So if you're in northeast of Scotland, I grew up in a place called Aberlour, which is Speyside. It's very close to places like Dufton, where you get Glenfiddich and Balvenie. Aberlour Distillery, that's where I started work. 16 years old, we go to Rothes, and it's our friend's birthday, and we could get into the bar there, because it's a small village, and you can kind of get into bars in a small village. But we don't do that. Instead, we get someone to buy us beers, and we stay at home, and we all take out, oh, I've got a bottle of vodka, I've got a bottle of gin. This is the stuff we've managed to procure. And I'm the only one that's got this bottle of whiskey. To which all the guys take a sip and say, I don't want it. To which I go, that's a waste, so I'll drink it. So, long story short, I ended up drinking most of this bottle. And we went to the sort of Rothes social golf club place, where it's predominantly older men. Everyone's sold it when you're 16, but predominantly older men when you're there. And I started talking to one of them, and he was getting me what was called a pint and a chaser. It was my first experience with that as well. I remember my first pint in some of that first whiskey, and I don't remember much else. I know that I couldn't see, so I lost that sense. I couldn't talk, so I lost that, and I couldn't walk either. It got so bad that halfway through the night, there was two women that were looking after me who I used to be in drama class with in high school. They were called Laura, so they were Laura squared. And I was arm over each Laura, and when I wanted to be sick, I would just sort of lift an arm and grunt. So it got to the point where someone went, we need to do something about this. Like, he's really, really, really drunk, and we need to do something. And then somehow someone decided that we should phone my mum
My mum's a midwife, right? So phone's mum. Mum comes over, and next thing I know, I'm in my bed, like covered in sick the next day. She comes through and she's like, "Look, you're really ill, but you'll be paying the price. You'll suffer, right?" A proper Scottish way to do it. So I suffered for a few days. But I think what the most embarrassing part was that on that car journey home, I had decided that the best thing I should do, now bear in mind I couldn't talk a word, apparently, until I get in the car with my mum, was to explain to her my escapades of the night with a certain young lady. So I've never really lived that one down. And the jokes at school, as you can imagine, on a golf course, I shall not repeat them. I'm sure we can all imagine what they are. But I think the lesson is, don't drink a half bottle of J&B when you're 16. I don't actually know that lesson, but I couldn't drink whiskey. I fucking hated it. And then I went to start this job at Abbott Distillery, and I fell in love with the history. I fell in love with the stories. That's why we're talking about this. I'm off on a tangent again. The stories. I fell in love with the history of whiskey, and I thought it was the most cool, awesome thing ever, because it's true Scottish history. And it's not like bloody Loch Ness Monster, who's just a big fucking puddle. It's the most visited puddle in the world, and everyone comes to see it, and we take money from it. So I mean, who's really the mug? It's not like football. It didn't used to be football. Football existed, but it didn't be how it was. It's not like fucking tartans and bagpipes. That was introduced by a writer to give Scotland an identity. So all that's your kind of fake history, whereas whiskey's real. You know, we've been doing that since day one. I mean, Ireland would argue that they done it first. Doesn't matter. Scotland and Ireland were both doing it for a very long time, and that's what kind of got me into whiskey. You didn't even ask me what got me into whiskey. I've just went off on a tangent. Sorry, Marcus. I'm away already. Half a beer down.
That was my next question. I've got it. I would show you the questions, but I've got my phone set up in a weird way. It's suspended on a bottle of Glenfarclas 15-year-old.
Beautiful
so
travel.
if I move it down from there, I'll never get the phone back on where it is. But
no,
that
was
my next question was actually, how do you get into whiskey? So, no,
I can answer that. There you go. Perfect.
Well, my old man used to tell me this story, because my old man is often, and my mother as well, they both questioned how I got into whiskey, because both of them hate it. To the point that when I started getting into it, my old man told me a story about when he would have been 15, 16 as well. He got himself a bottle of whiskey with his mates. They did the same thing. They didn't want it, so he drank it all. And they would ride on their bikes. He fell off his bike, and his mates were helping him until a cop car came around the corner. His mates all rode away, because you leave a man behind when you're drunk.
Yeah.
Apparently. The cops picked him up and put him into the drunk tank for the night. When he woke up the next morning, his mother was there. My grandmother was out the front of the cell staring at him, and there was sick everywhere, and he felt like shit. And she said, "Thanks for taking care of him. I'll take him home." And they said, "Oh yeah, we'll just get the cell cleaned up." And she said, No. He'll clean the cell.
You'll clean up. Mm-hmm.
And that was his punishment, was, you've done this, you need to clean the drunk tank. This is your fault. And since then, my dad does not touch. So he says he doesn't touch whiskey. But I found when I was living in Australia, when I was at their place, my nice red wine cask and port cups mature whiskey. Every now and then I walk down to get a glass of water at night, and he'd be there just kind of looking at it with a glass and filling up.
Quite right.
I have to say, I used to say that cost me a lot of money, and he said, "Well, I've been paying for your drinking habits for years." I'm like, all right, don't know if that's an insult, don't know what that means. Love your dad, by the way.
It's a weird one, right? It's, as you know, as when we were both working at Scotch Malt Whisky Society, we both done tastings. And there was always that thing in a tasting. Very seldom you got a full tasting where everyone would drink whiskey. There was always that odd person there that didn't drink whiskey. And when you ask them, you know what the answer is. I have a bad story about whiskey. And I used to always counteract that in my tastings and go, "Look, I know what you're going to say. You've had a bad experience." And they're like, "Oh my God, how did you know?" And you're like, "Because everyone's had a bad experience with whiskey." But here's the thing. You've had a lot more bad experiences with beer, wine, tequila, all these things, but you come back to them. But there's something about whiskey that you just go, it's a hard no. And I don't know what it is. My experience, I'm not saying it's worse than anyone else's, but it was pretty damn horrific. I was out for several days later, but I needed money, so I joined that distillery. And then I very quickly had a great tutor in Dennis, and he taught me how to appreciate whiskey. And the thing is with whiskey, I know it's an old thing to say, but it's true. You just spend a few minutes having a wee smell and a taste, or you talk to someone who's got a wee bit of knowledge and has got a bit of passion behind them, and you will love whiskey because it's just taste. It's taste buds, and it's the best liquid that you can get. And I'm not just saying that because I work with whiskey and we both love whiskey. I'm saying it because it's so diverse. Vodka, I really like vodka. Is it as diverse as whiskey? No, I love beer, I love wine, I love gin, I love tequila. But it's just not got, for me, the diversification and those interesting, weird, quirky things. Like you said, your dad with red wine and port. Glenfiddich's done stuff in ice wine. This is your first bottle to be ever finished in an ale cask in 1996, and that's what half and half, your beer and your whiskey. It's just cool as fuck. And I think when people meet people like ourselves, and you show that passion, and you just start taking them through like basic stuff, like, oh, that's how you smell it, have a wee taste, they suddenly go, do you know what, this is all right. But people don't just go from I don't like whiskey to like it. They go from I don't like to I fucking love it, and I'm going to tell you everything about it. And that's what I like about whiskey. They go from novice to so in depth about it and loving it so much, and you're like, I don't know any other hobby or anything else that does that to people like whiskey does.
No, you're right. There's no real middle ground with whiskey. It's either you will drink it, you will invest, and you will research, or you'll be like, no, it's not me. But I always love saying to people, whenever they say that I'm not into whiskey, you got to consider, like, between Scotland, Australia, America, and Germany, you've got over 1,000 different distilleries. Around the world, about 65 to 70 countries distill whiskey. You think about how many different distilleries, how many different types of casks, many different types of barley, finishes, the ages, how many different whiskies there will be in the world. There is going to be a whiskey in the world for you. And if you had a bad experience with one whiskey, that's just one whiskey. Okay, yeah. You cross that off the list. It's kind of like saying, I don't know, I didn't like this red wine that I had from France in Bordeaux, so I'm not going to drink any more red wine. That's kind of the best way to put it. Like, you say
that's exactly what it is.
That's insane. And that's the same with whiskey. It's so varied, it's so different. There's so much of it. And I mean, I think the real challenge and the real hardship is for people like us, because we want to try every single whiskey. I mean, there is not enough time and money in our lives to try every single whiskey. True.
I'll give you that.
No, but anyways, so we started, because the first time I met you was I started working at the Scotch Rod Whisky Society in Scotland.
Yep.
And you were there for a year to 18 months, and then shortly after you participated in the greatest job interview in the world, or the world's greatest job interview.
Yeah, greatest job interview in the world. Yeah.
And you've been traveling ever since. And you do so much shit. I am constantly seeing Danny's face pop up on social media. I don't use social media an awful lot, so it's weird where I'm like, I wonder what's happening today. Oh, Danny's doing that. Okay.
Yeah.
But something I also found was a standout was you were a cocktail lover as well.
Yeah.
And there was a big pushback. There seems to be this two opposing people to this. Same thing with whiskey. I either love it or I hate it.
Yeah.
When you're using whiskey in a cocktail, there's other people who say you cannot do it. That's sacrilege. Or there's someone who says, yeah, by all means do it. It's fine.
Yeah.
We want to see more of it.
Yeah.
What cocktails do you have in your repertoire that you're like, oh yeah, I love this? And also, what cocktails have you found in your travels through Kenya, through Lebanon, through the States? Which ones have you found that you're like, this is standout, I want to have this, I want to keep this forever?
Interesting question, right? The whole whiskey, cocktail, tobacco. I'm just about to piss some more people off, but I don't really care. I've had a few whiskeys and I'm going to say it. There's two schools in whiskey. That is the old school and the new school. And thankfully the old school are leaving. And the old school is, I know whiskey, I only know whiskey, women aren't allowed in whiskey, I can only let you into whiskey if I know you, and it's just for this certain type. If I know information about whiskey, I will not share it. Don't add water, don't add ice, don't do any of this stuff. And I just think it is so backwards, broken, and wrong. Whereas the new school are very much everyone can drink whiskey, everyone can enjoy it, you can play with it how you want, because you know what? When it comes down to it, I don't tell you how to drink your coffee. I don't tell you how to put salt and vinegar in your fish and chips or salt and brown sauce if you're from Edinburgh. So I'm not going to tell you what to do with your whiskey. And I think that just kills that argument, right? So, like, do whatever you want with your whiskey. Are you happy drinking it? So be it. No one else would come up to you if you're drinking a gin and tonic, a beer, a wine, or something else. Like, you shouldn't be having a spritzer with that white wine. You know what I mean? It just doesn't happen. But cocktails, the one that got me into cocktails was old fashions, man. It's a real, you know it well. It's a really, really simple drink. It's just ice, whiskey, a peel of an orange, some aromatic bitters, which is basically just like spices and roots mixed together with alcohol. You've seen the bottles in the bar with the oversized label, and a little bit of sugar, and you mix it. And it is such a simple drink, and I love all mixed drinks. And when I say mixed drinks, there's no sort of like juice that goes into mixed drinks. It's predominantly like a spirit, and then dilution comes through the mixing of the ice and the dilution of the water. And the reason I love those drinks is because they tend to be a little bit stronger. I like stronger drinks, as you know, and they sip. They don't drink as quick as like a juicier cocktail or a shaken drink would. So I love all sort of like mixed drinks, like old fashions. Boulevardier is another amazing drink. I love a Negroni as well, man. It's talking about Boulevardiers, but I love shaked drinks. And I think that the latest one I've done on my channel, I had a wee break as I came over to Sweden, was a New York sour. And look, I'll be honest, I hadn't actually tried a New York sour in New York, but I'd been told to try one. I just didn't have the time. And that was the first New York sour I tried, and it was mine. I didn't use an egg white. I thought that was sacrilege not to use an egg white for a sour, but it's totally fine. And you know what? I was blown away. I love a sour. A sour is an incredibly juicy, easy drinking cocktail. It's just too easy. That's why you need to switch up to a mixed drink. And a New York sour with that hit of red wine is phenomenal. So if anyone who likes a sour or likes some of those shaken drinks or those juicier drinks, try a New York sour. It looks cool and it tastes even better. If you don't like cocktails and you like whiskey, try an old fashioned, or try putting a few bits of ice into your whiskey and put a wee orange peel over it. Something that we do with all our Grants range, the triple with the smoky and the 12. It's a wee hack that I came up with, which is if you're sitting at home and you don't want to make a cocktail and you're kind of like, oh, I want to switch up a bit, ice cools down your whiskey and it also changes the flavour and it dilutes it, and an orange peel gives you a really big hit aromatically of the fruit, and it wakes up the fruitiness in Grants, because Grants has big orange flavours coming through. So if you're ever sitting with like a triple wood smoky or a 12-year-old, twist a wee bit of orange peel in there and try 1 or 2 blocks of ice. Completely changes it from your standard dram.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and I love the versatility of cocktails. I think that's amazing. As you say, old fashions are amazing, and just what you can do with old fashioned, the amount of citrus fruit you have available, the amount of bitters you have available. If you get a good bartender, they will do everything for you, and they will make you the best mixed drink you could ever have. But I also agree, the old school with whiskey, it's weird. We both know a lot of those guys.
We learned from them, Marcus. You probably learned from them as well. I learned from them. I was lucky. I had a lucky training, but yeah, I know what they're like. Yeah.
No, I learned from them as well, and I think the thing that set us apart, and I don't want us to sound like we're young and we know better.
Or younger.
It was kind of we asked when someone said you can't put this into whiskey, you can't put whiskey into this. We said, well, why? And the argument that came back, which was because that's not how you do it. That was never enough. That was like, that's a weak argument. Like, if I can make something really tasty. And then the amount of the old guys as well would say, oh, no, you can't do anything with whiskey. And then they add water to their whiskey, and they'll add, the whiskey's there, and they'll add water up to there, and it's like,
yeah.
I mean, by all means, you drink your whiskey like that. I'm not going to say you can't, but why would you tell me I can't put my whiskey in a cocktail? It's weird. It's different, especially because a lot of these guys grew up. A lot of these older guys, they'll be what 50, 60 plus, and they would have grown up drinking whiskey in an age where whiskey was nowhere near as diverse and as kind of complicated as it is now. They would have grown up in an age where it was this is your single malt that you buy for 10, 15 quid. There you go. That's it. But it has that image around it, and I do want the new school to come through and get rid of that image, because that image is not a good image for the industry.
It is, man. It's massively coming through. Like you look at the stuff that Glenfiddich's done with the experimental series, like ice wine casks and sherry and smoke and all this crazy shit, and then you look at some of the stuff that we're doing with Grants, like heavily pushing cocktails, and our triple wood series. You look at Monkey Shoulder, they're party daft and they're all about on trade. Massively shift. Like William Grants is great for that. A lot of marketing plug in case you didn't realise, but it's true. I love the company I work for, and they're amazing with me, and they let me get away with a hell of a lot of stuff I probably shouldn't get away with, like how I talk, and they've embraced it, and they're like, yeah, that's cool, man. Like, this is how Grants is, and we'll work with you, and this is how you feel it should be. Because I came in pretty hard on Grants, and I was like, people just don't know about it, we're not shouting about it, we're not making cocktails, I haven't really done much of that. And I was like, I want to do the cocktails, I want to go out, I want to see the people, I want to talk to these people. And some of the stuff that we're working on just now with our brand team is really, really forward thinking and pretty scary, because it's hitting a place where I don't think alcohol has been, never mind whiskey, before. So look, a few people being like, are you a rum? Are you this? What you try to be? And I'm like, good. Like, I'd rather you really hate it or really like it, as opposed to being like, oh, it's a whiskey. You know what I mean? I think we need to really explore some of these harder topics that we're about to explore and push out there. And if you make a mistake, we make a mistake. Like, we didn't mean it. You know what I mean? We're trying to get more people involved and ask the harder questions. So I've been very fortunate to have the brand that I've got. It really did suit me. And when you think about that interview I did, that was 5,000 people, and somehow they managed to pick me, and it really did. It does suit Grants. So yeah, I'm very, very fortunate that we've got a very forward-thinking company, a very forward-thinking brand team, and that we're here and we can do this sort of stuff and be open and honest about it. It's not that the old school are bad or wrong, that's their way, but anytime you discourage or tell someone how to do something with their whiskey, I just think it's a weird thing to do. Let them figure it out themselves and enjoy it, you know, always offer support as opposed to negativity.
No, I think that's completely correct. And the way that the new school comes through, if you're trying to attract new drinkers, because whiskey wants to have more drinkers. The more drinkers that whiskey has, the better. That's more people involved. That's more people being a part of it. More people saying, hey, I want to know about this. I want to know about that. And by Grants hiring someone like yourself, you know, you're charismatic, you're talkative, and you want to chat about whiskey. And that's the best thing. But you will chat to whiskey about anyone. And the worst thing is when you go to a festival and, you know, I've gone we've both gone to a ton of whiskey festivals. We both worked a ton of whiskey festivals. And you can tell when you go to some of these stands aren't going to talk to us. Like, I remember I was at the London whiskey show, and I was manning a stand, and these guys came up and they looked 20 to 25 years old, young 20s, you know? And when I started chatting with them and they opened up, and one of them said to me, a lot of the people downstairs didn't want to talk to us. A couple of guys, they didn't refuse service, but they just ignored us the entire time. And we just want to learn about whiskey. And that was like, I had that experience as well. I remember that. And it was you're being forced out because you don't have grey hair, you don't have a beard, you're not wearing tweed. If you're not male as well, that's a big
males. That's a crazy one, man. Like
my partner drinks not as much whiskey as I do, but that's because, you know, I shouldn't. No one should drink this much whiskey. But
yeah,
you know, she doesn't have whiskey she drinks. But then she talks to people and she's like talking about whiskey to them. I'm like, yeah, but you're not a guy, and that's like, why is that the first thing you come to? Why is that the first thing? So you've got to have someone who is inclusive rather than exclusive. And with the old boys, they don't necessarily get it. I'm not saying they're all like that. To any of them who are watching or any of them watch this, I'm sorry, but that does come up a lot, and that is something big in the industry.
And you know what? Times are changing, and they have to adapt with it and cope with it as well, because look, it is what it is. The reason we're talking about it is because that's how we feel. Whether it be right or wrong, that's how we feel. That's how many people feel. And it's another reason why I like doing what I do, because we've got Gemma Patterson, who's a global whiskey ambassador for Balvenie, and she's amazing. She's absolutely brand new. And we've now got Kelsey McKinchie, who's our apprentice master blender. And I'm like, it makes total sense. Women have a better nose and a better palate than men do. Of course they should be blending the stuff, making the stuff, tasting the stuff, and telling us about it. The amount of times I've been drinking with Angelica, my missus, and I'll be sitting smelling. Sometimes I'm crap, right? I've got like hay fever, hence the fact that I'm constantly touching my nose right now. And I'm like, nah, this just ain't working today. Or sometimes I'm like, oh, I totally get it. See, all the time, she's like, I think it's but. And I'm like, motherfucker, you're right. Yeah, you're spot on. And it's so fucking handy to have. And she's amazing at making cocktails. She's just, women are better. Like, my favourite person in the world is my mum. And it's how I've been brought up. You know, women are better at this stuff. We're just big babies, and they choose to look after us. And we're lucky that they choose to put up with it. Because if they go, no, you're gone, you're like, what do I do? So why should we discriminate against something as silly as a whiskey, as a dram that we can bond over? It really irks me. It does. It winds me up. We used to get it in the society. Like, people would ask for us as opposed to like Joe or Emma or Lucy, and you're like, these people know how to do a tasting just as good, if not better. They've been here longer, they know more, but you're coming to me because I've got a beard and I'm Scottish, and you're away to Marcus because, again, he's got a beard and he's a guy. Like, what is going on here? It's madness, absolute madness. But I suppose you could probably get the same thing when it comes to things like what seems is female-led. For example, like a beautician or a makeup artist. It's probably very sexist me saying that, but that's what I think is makeup-led. I'm sure there's amazing guys at doing that sort of thing, but women may predominantly go towards the female. But I'm glad that we're kind of changing that view, and it's not as instilled as it was even just 12 years ago when I started this. It was pretty bad. So we have come on leaps and bounds since then.
No, I agree with you there. I mean, the amount of times when we were both working, the amount of times people would come to us was ridiculous. And I can tell you with certainty, there are aspects of whiskey I know more about than Joe and Lucy. Those aspects would be like, I know more about Australian whiskey and about like certain whiskey, just because that's my focal point. That's where I go. But in terms of whiskey as a whole, and in terms of whiskey as general, what's behind the bar, what tastes good, I would go to Joe and Lucy every time, because they've been working there for years. Yeah. And they know everything like the back of their hand. And the amount of time I would say something and one of them would say, watch yourself. And they would talk to me afterwards and say, you said this, it's actually this. I'm like, oh, yeah. Well, I didn't know that. And they just knew it better. Great cheers. What?
Yeah, they're really good cheers. Yeah. And also, you don't mess with Joe, right? Like, Joe knows everything about that place. We're talking about Scottish Malt Whisky Society in Edinburgh, in Leith by the Vaults. For anyone who's watching this and thinking, what the hell are these two guys talking about? There's a woman there called Jo. If you ever want to know about a whiskey, like, ask Jo. She will not do tastings because she's got this. She just doesn't want to do tastings. She thinks she's crap at doing tastings, even though she's not. Ask for John. If Joe's not there, ask for Dean. Dean's mental, but I absolutely love Dean, and that man knows that place like the back of his hand. If you're ever in Edinburgh, please do. I know times are strange right now, but if you're there, I know they're opened up. They're socially distanced, opened up. The food's amazing. The people that work there are really, really lovely, and they've got a really cool, diverse bunch right now. They've got some people from brewing and distilling, like Gavin. I think he's leaving soon. That was the guy who done the first. Oh, I'm going to butcher this. He done one of the first Singaporean malts or something like that. Gavin's a really cool guy. You'd get on with him. After this, I'll put you in touch with Gavin. They've got so many different people there from such a wide background and all differing interests in whiskey. So if you can, do visit the Scottish Malt Whisky Society down in Edinburgh and Leith, the Vaults, because it's brand new. It's a really, really cool place, and I'm sure if you say that myself or Marcus has sent you, they'll tell you to leave straight away. So don't mention our names.
Whoa! I left.
You left on big terms.
Reasonable terms. Okay? I left on reasonable terms. Maybe don't mention my name to some people. That's
okay.
if you mention our names to the people who work behind the bar, it's all fine.
You're fine.
You're fine.
You're fine.
If you mention our names to anyone downstairs, that's bad.
Yeah.
Aside from maybe Julian and you.
Yeah, Julian's fine with me. Yeah, just don't do that. It's fine. That'll be another whole hour-long chat about the vaults. We won't get into that.
No. We won't go into that. One last question I want to ask you before we move on to the world-renowned quiz and anagram round, which I'm sure I told you about.
I think you did. I look like a complete numpty now. I'll be like, oh yeah, I know lots about whiskey, and I'm like, I have no idea. But no, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. Go for the last serious question.
It does. Apparently, I've not told the last 5 people that we do quizzes and anagrams, and I've just been forgetting. Doesn't matter.
I'm okay with it, man. It's me.
I want to ask: has your taste for whiskey changed since you started drinking?
Yeah, 100%. 100%, dude.
How often would you say?
It's a good question, but it's also obviously, because 12 years doing something, my taste in food has changed. My taste in general has changed because I smoke. Everything changes. You're constantly growing. You remember when you didn't drink coffee, you didn't drink beer, and the older you get accustomed to it, right? My taste has massively changed, and again, we're going to talk about vaults. It was an important point for both of us, but vaults is a really interesting one to take when it comes to changing of tastes, right? So in SMW, I feel like I'm plugging Scotch Malt Whisky Society, which I kind of am, but more specifically Leith, the vaults. That's who I'm plugging. So I'm sure if anyone
plug the bartenders. There we go.
Yeah, well, exactly.
If you go to the vaults in Leith, make sure you tip the bartenders good. That's who we're
playing. Yeah, that's a good point, man. Yeah, the bartenders are fucking brand new. They put in so much work, and they give you such a great experience, especially now during COVID. I went there for Lucy's dad's, Brian's birthday, and I'm sure this is great to listen to for all your listeners, but I'm going to tell it anyway because it's our little podcast, and we're chatting away.
We got a pause right there. I did not get an invite for Ryan's birthday.
But you're not there. You're in Wales, man. You're not in Wales or something. Where are you? Where do you live right now? You're not in Edinburgh, are you?
We're not going to go into that.
No, okay.
I should have got an invite. Brian's awesome. I love.
Yeah, Brian's amazing. Lucy, she actually works at Holyrood Distillery just now. She was an employee at Scotch Malt Whisky Society, and her dad is probably got one of the biggest collections and the biggest hearts ever. He's such a lovely guy, as is his wife Sarah. They're great. They're super cool with me. I feel like an adopted son with them sometimes. I really do, and they're really lovely to a lot of people. So it was his birthday, and it was all socially distanced, but food was brand new. The people were great. The service was great. But the reason I'm talking about this, god damn these tangents, is because they only serve cask strength whiskey, which is basically whiskey that's sitting anywhere between 46 to 67, 68 plus percent, right? So when you work there, you're predominantly drinking cask strength whiskey. In fact, all I was drinking when I was there for about my year, I think it was cask strength whiskies. So it meant when people would come in, like Adam and that, or Angus would come in with some nice samples, and they were really, really good with us, and they'd go, oh, try this. It tasted like water. And I know that seems like, oh, he says it tastes like water, but it genuinely did, because your palate had become so accustomed and used to drinking such high strength whiskey. When you drank whiskey that was sitting at 40, 43 or 46, it was so light, it was really hard to pick up the flavours from. Now that goes to show you, now that happened to me after about 3 months. If you keep eating the same thing over and over and over and over again, you're going to screw your palate up. So when you talk about how my whiskey flavour and my things have changed massively, I now work for a blend and I drink predominantly blends. I also drink a lot of cocktails, but I have my cask strength stuff. So I think my palate's a bit varied, but I've never drunk as many cocktails as I have now, because when I go to these markets, I often go behind the bar, I show off, make some cocktails, talk to the bartenders, blah, blah, blah. So it's a lot of cocktails and a lot of new foods, a lot of new beers, wines, things like that. So my palate's a bit everywhere, which is great, but also I smoke, which isn't great. So all these things affect it. But I think you do go through phases, right? Maybe that's what you're trying to hit on. I went through my sherry phase. I love sherry whiskies. Now I'm in a bourbon phase. I love my bourbon whiskies. But I adore and love all whiskies. I've went through my smoky stage of whiskies, but I tend to try and stay away from that, because if you're drinking smoky whiskey all night, you kind of blitz your palate a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, massively changed. I started with Aberlour, a very fruity, green apple led, sweet Speyside, a classic Speyside, a dangerous whiskey, take the cork weight and throw away. And then went into your sort of Glenlivet, Strathisla, worked there for a bit, then working in your whiskey bars, and then like it just changes all the time. But that's what you love, man. That's what I enjoy about doing this. But man, same question to you. Your whiskey taste must have changed massively, especially with the sort of more obscure whiskies and strange casks that you've tried, because you actively search for those things.
I mean, I want to find them because they are, to me, those are the interesting parts about whiskey. I love everything Scotland is doing. I love everything Ireland is doing. But give me a whiskey from a country you would never associate with whiskey any day of the week over anything else, because I know Scotland's always going to do whiskey. Ireland's always going to do whiskey. Rwanda has one whiskey distillery. That might not be there tomorrow. Like, by the way, I think it's called Thousand Hills or 100 Rivers or something. There is a whiskey distillery in Rwanda. I've actually got some whiskey on.
Yeah.
They are meant to be amazing, but it's more like I want to know about this. I went through, unlike you, I went through a bourbon phase at the start, because my introduction to whiskey was bourbons and Kentucky whiskeys and Tennessee whiskeys. Jim Beam and Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels and Coke was pretty much what me and a mate drank for ages. That's yeah. And then Jim Beam and Coke for years after that. And then it was Australian whiskies, which is like super heavy on red wine and port cask finishing. And I started and I tried sherry cask whiskies. I do not like sherry cask whiskies. I'm just not a fan. There are two exceptions to that.
Well, obviously a Farkless 15. It must be a Glenfarclas 15.
Glenfarclas 15 and Aberlour Buna are my.
That's the two sherries that got me into it. They got me into it. Like Aberlour Buna got me into sherried whiskies, and I'm sure I told you my story about Aberlour, about the whole why it's called a Buna from the origin, all that old school stuff. Because that's what I love that story and I love that drink. And then I know Big George Grant, who owns Glenfarclas, and he showed me Glenfarclas 15. I was like, fucking hell, this is. I often think 15's a sweet spot when it comes to whiskey anyway, but that just blows everything else out the water when it comes to, for me, 15-year-old single malts. Unless, and I'm not just saying it because I work for them, we talk about a Glenfiddich 15. Very different style, Solera Vat, very funky, but I put a Glenfiddich 15, a Glenfarclas 15, that is a killer head-to-head. It's a really, really interesting battle there. But yeah, like it's funny. I think you should try Tamdhu Batch Strength #1. I think you'd love that. I also think you should try some of this crazy Glenglassaugh stuff that I've been drinking lately. It's not you don't like them, because you already drink whiskey that is bourbon and sherry matured, and you love one of what's essentially the kings of, well, it's called the king of sherry, it's Glenfarclas, and the big heavy hitters like Buna, which is cash strength, full on stuff. And you drunk sherry stuff at SMWS as well. I think you have a preference to the other stuff, which is fine, but you have a palate for those rich flavours. Like the very first whiskey we talked about today was that Lebanese whiskey, 3-year-old and a virgin oak, and that is predominantly big spice, tannic, oak and dry. What is sherry? That with a bit of sweetness put in. Instead of spice, it's sweet spice. So I think it's not that you don't like them. I think you just like really strong flavours with them and really well-rounded sherry cask whiskies. Oh no, I've lost them. Oh no, I don't even know if I'm still live. I think Marcus has exited the conversation. He's on a swirly thing. Oh, he's back.
Sorry. My router just had just died. So I switched to mobile data on my phone because this is going.
Damn, this is going to cost you so much.
No. I've still got a little bit left. I really need to change my phone plan because Jesus Christ, I can't record these on my phone anymore.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Cost you a ton.
Oh,
sorry, I was just telling you that sherry whiskey is amazing and you love sherry whiskey. Carry on.
No, sherry whiskey to me is something that it's a hit or a miss, and there's many more hit and misses than there are hits. But there are definitely sherry whiskies out there I would love. It's just about finding them, though, which is why, every time I go to a bar, if there's a whiskey I've not tried, I will try that whiskey, because that's the excitement about it. The problem comes when you go to a place that has a huge selection and you've not tried like half the menu and you're like, well, this is going to be a long fucking night.
But isn't that exactly what we've been talking about today? I think we're both champions of people that work in hospitality, and your servers, waiters, bar people, whatever you want to call them. Isn't that exactly when you go up to the person that's behind that bar and say, excuse me, sir, madam, like, I need a hand with this? And that's exactly what we're here for, what we've done. Like, that's when these people can get really put to the test and have fun and give you great stories, and they enjoy it as well, especially if they're working in a whiskey bar. Like, I've done it many times traveling around. I've just walked up to the person and I'm like, excuse me, I don't know a lot of this, like, I like and then suddenly you get a great conversation and you're sitting in the bar with this person one-on-one while there's all sorts of other stuff and they're busting their ass doing all sorts of other things, and you're like, this is the best thing ever, because they're still coming up and like, I didn't forget about you, I'm just, give me a minute. You're like, dude, just, you take your time, you do your thing, you know what I mean? So it's why I loved doing what I did for so long, and it's why I have such a massive respect and admiration for everyone that works in the hospitality industry. And it's just it's a pretty shitty, fucked up time for them actually just now. Like, for example, the missus is fired from her previous job, which she was awesome at, and it's hurting the owner, like, and I feel sorry for him as well. And that's why I'm like, we should start going out to bars, we should be talking to these people, and you'll learn so much if you're new to it, and you'll learn so much even if you're experienced at it. So like test these people, because they enjoy it. That's why they're there,
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. And to anyone who is watching now, and to anyone who watches this in the future, support your local bar. Like, go in, be kind to the people, and make sure you pick something up. If you could afford to, I know a couple of guys have done this. If you could afford to, put a tab down at that bar. Take a bit of money, put a tab at the bar, and say, I'm paying you this now. Mark me off for as long as that works, and then tell me when the tab is done. That can support the local business, the local industry, and the people that serve you. That will mean the world to them.
Yeah, of course it will.
And, anyway, that is all of our serious questions done and dusted.
Good. I feel I went on just tangents, man. I apologise. You know what I'm like? As soon as you said, oh, do you want to do this? I was like, man, I'm just a wee typical Scottish guy. I know I'm going to run off on a few weird tangents, but you've done very well sort of like coping with this. And for the poor people that have had to watch this and been like, I'm sure he's got all these questions about grants and global brand ambassador and all that stuff. Like, if you've got any questions or anything like that, just help Marcus or me. We'll do one of these again, or I'll just tell you. You know what I mean? I'm sure we can put this video up on social and link it to Instagram and all that stuff. That's me just saying so the stuff so the legal can look at it and go, at least he actually mentioned that he works for Grants and he's a whiskey ambassador, because I'm technically working right now. So when they're like, what the fuck have you been doing last week? I was like, I did this really important podcast where I just talked about Scotch Malt Whisky Society for the most time and told people how I got really drunk on a golf course and had sex with someone. So yeah, I hope people enjoyed it. I hope they've had fun, because you're about to really laugh if I'm going to get quizzed and questioned about a bunch of whiskies that I claim to know about but clearly don't.
Well, Danny, I'm not going to lie to you. Of the 7 questions I had for you, only 2 or 3 of them involved your work at William Grants or something.
All right, okay.
It was more because the tangents are the best bits. Someone going off on a tangent and just blatantly blazing into whiskey. That's the best bit. That's when you find stuff out. I would much rather you do that and questions come up organically than it's me reading off a list of questions and that's saying,
Good.
How are your budget return? I don't know. This is how bad I am with questions.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Awesome. Good stuff, man. No, I've had good fun. I'm excited and nervous about this next bit.
I'm imagining you're going to be one of the highest scoring people.
Yeah, that's great. I told you I'm excited, nervous. Now you're telling me how awesome I'm going to be. Thanks a lot.
For those people who are watching now and in the future, I've got
dear.
5 questions about whiskey for Danny, followed by 5 anagrams about whiskey for Danny.
Cool.
If you know the answer, comment, shoot it in. You can only comment from Twitter, by the way. You can't comment from Facebook, but, you know, comment anyway. Join the conversation, all that shit. Anyway.
Yeah, do all that stuff.
So, your first question.
Go for it, man.
Which blended whiskey started in the 19th century in an Italian grocery and spirit store on the high street of Kilmarnock?
It's probably Johnny Walker. It was Johnny Walker and Sons that had the... Johnny Walker, yeah.
Yeah, Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker.
Yeah, Johnny Walker. There's a great art. Again, I don't care. Right, so I don't care if it's a competition. I love all whiskies. There's a really beautiful artwork for Johnny Walker called "Keep On Walking" with Robert Carlyle, and he very quickly sums up a lot of the history of Johnny Walker. So if you're watching this, I work for direct competitors, but we all love each other in the whiskey world. Really, we do. And I drink Johnny Walker as well. It's not a bad whiskey at all. And there's this great advert with Robert Carlyle telling you the origins of Johnny Walker. Yeah, the answer is Johnny Walker. Sorry.
No, that was great. I love that. That's okay. That's fantastic. That's
fire on.
You know,
fire
that's
on.
the shit I want. Okay. Ballantine's was which American president loved cocktails and Ballantine's whiskey?
Oh wow, that's an interesting one.
This is oh Christ, I think it was daiquiris and margaritas. He also loved.
It's a complete. Yeah, I think most presidents have been male, right? Unless there's something I don't know.
Ones,
yeah,
you know, that's a big clue.
See, to be honest, I love Hunter S. Thompson, and he often talks about Chivas in his diet and stuff. So the answer I'm going to give is the answer that I really hope that it would be, which is Reagan. I would love for Reagan to be drinking daiquiris in Ballantine's. So that's going to be my answer.
I mean, I want to give you a point for creativity.
No, just tell me the answer. I just thought it'd be hilarious to see him do that.
It's JFK.
JFK, yeah, probably. Honestly, JFK. I was thinking JFK is my second, but I hope it's Reagan. I really hope it's Reagan.
I would have. How awesome would it have? Like imagining, you know, Nancy talking to Ronald and Ronald sipping on a margarita, just like
that would be so funny. Of course it's JFK, because like in my head I'm like the presidents I know are JFK and Reagan, and I think Reagan is absolute madness but so funny at the same time. It's almost like the whole Trump, which we're not going to get into, but the thought of Reagan drinking daiquiris is so funny in my head. I'm going to have to try and think of something that I can bring that into my content somehow, because that's made me laugh. Also really cool bit of information about JFK enjoying his cocktails and stuff. Very cool question.
Anyway, our next one. Which Speyside distillery commissioned Charles Dewey to design a new distillery after the original was destroyed by a fire in 1898?
I know this, and it's annoying that I can't think of it straight away, because I used to use this years and years ago.
You should know this, that's the thing.
I should know it. So, I know Aberlour got destroyed by a fire, and I think that's probably why Charles Dewey's coming up in my head. So I'm going to say Aberlour.
Yeah, it was Aberlour.
That's how long it's been since I've actually done that tour, and that's where my history came from. That's pretty bad. I should have just known that straight away from 1898, but yeah.
Well, the good thing is I wrote that question because I remembered you used to work at Abbott.
Yeah.
I wrote that question, and then about 5 minutes before we started this broadcast, my mind went, what if he used to work for Aberfelding?
No, that's big Matthew Cordner, an amazing ambassador who works at Aberfeldy right now. He's home ambassador for Craigellachie and Aberfeldy, and Endures another amazing blended whiskey. So if you do want to take a tour at Aberlour, ask for Matthew Cordner, amazing guy.
Right, question number 4. William Grant, founder of Glenfiddich Distillery, worked at which nearby Speyside distillery for almost 20 years?
So he worked at Cardew for a bit, and he took the when he built. Let me get this right. I think when he built Balvenie, was it Glenfiddich? He took the stills from Cardew. I believe it was old stills from Cardew that he had took to build Glenfiddich. So I'm going to say he was. I think he was an accountant or the bookkeeper at Cardew. I could be totally wrong here. I probably should know that as well.
If I told you this distillery was a 1.1 mile walk south.
Yeah, it's right next to it. I don't know why I'm saying it's either Mortlick or is it Mortlick or Cardew? I don't know why I'm saying Cardew. I know this answer, and it's really annoying me that I don't know this answer, and I'm going to put it down to excessive alcohol consumption because that's where he got the still. Is it Mortlick? Because it was just by Rothis, I think he was working. Fuck it, man. I'll just say Mortlick. I should know that, but I don't, obviously. It is Mortlick. Yeah, that's really bad. I said it, and the previous Cardew shit. It took it from Mortlick. I don't know why I had Cardew in my head there, but it is. He used to walk there, and he was a bookkeeper for quite some time at Mortlick, and it was an old still that he'd used to take over with him and his kids that had built Glenfiddich. Fucking hell, man! This looks horrible that I work for this company, but oh well.
Yeah. You know, this is, I mean, it's, what, 100, how many years ago was that? So that was...
Yeah, but dude, I use this in my history chat, man. I tell people about this stuff, I know the answer. I don't know why I was thinking, like, fuck's sake, man, like, where's the excuse, you know?
I was trying to pass over that, and
yeah, you done very well. So you said, I was like, why am I saying Cardew? It's Morley.
All right, my next question, my last quiz question.
Go for it.
What are the 3 oldest distilleries in Scotland that are still running today?
Fuck, that's a hard one because, I mean, if we're going officially, as in when they first got their license, Glenlivet's the first person to get their license, but people like Glenturret say they have been operating way before the licensing came in, which is 1824. So I don't really know how to put this into perspective, but I'll kind of put what I think you might by like age.
I'm talking before the license.
Before the licensing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Glenturret's definitely one which goes into Famous Grouse. I think that actually might be one of the oldest ones. I want to say Oban as well. I think that's an older one. God, other really old distilleries. That's a great question.
I'll give you a clue. There's, oh Christ, my whiskey knowledge has jumped out the window, but I believe you've got 2 Speyside and 1 Islay.
So there's 1 Islay as well. Your first Islay distillery, God, that's a great one. I mean, I'd like to say Lagavulin for your Islay, but that could be horribly wrong because I really love Lagavulin. I think maybe Lagavulin for your Islay. Speyside, well, it has to be Glenturret, right? I'm pretty sure Glenturret is one that goes into Famous Grouse. They talk about Towers of the Cat and how they're really old school. And then maybe, I don't know, another Speyside. I thought Oban was an older one. Maybe...
This is not someone... Think someone who releases less distillery bottlings than Tamdu. This is someone who does a lot of blending work.
I mean, that's a lot. You get places like Glenlossie that do a shit ton of blending stuff as well. I probably won't get that one, man, but I'm intrigued to see what they are.
Well, you're right with Glenturret.
Yeah. I think that's classed as one of the oldest, right? Even before licensing.
I believe Glenturret holds. I think they say on their bottle they believe they are the oldest distillery in Scotland still.
That's what they say.
They're definitely older, yeah.
Because the other one would be by Aberdeen, but that's not a Speyside whiskey, which is Glengarry. They put quite an old age statement on their whiskies as well. But a lot of them do. Yeah, it's a lot of them put that weird age. That's again, I know they're older, but when the license came in, it was 1824. But what was the three you had? I'm intrigued. Glenturret and what else?
Glenturret, from Isla, Bowmore.
Fucking of course, Bowmore. That's bad. Should have known
that. There's a lot of distilleries, and then Strathisla.
Fuck, I used to work with Strathisla as well. And the Strathisla was one of the first that had the Pagoda. See, I've got this fucking random knowledge of this shit, and I can't even like pick up from your questions. I knew this was going to happen. I do this all the time in quizzes. Strathisla was your first Pagoda roof as well. That was designed by a guy, and then Strathisla got it, and then from there a lot of other people got the Pagoda roofs. So there's a little tidbit of information where I try and hide the fact that I absolutely bollocksed up that question.
No. I mean, we're talking about 135 odd distilleries throughout Scotland. With 200 plus years. You have worked for a number of these people. I'm not seeing this as like as anything against you. I'm seeing this as a like, you know all of it. I've simply got you under pressure because I didn't let you know beforehand.
Nah, not at all, man. Not at all. I like this stuff. I think it's good. I think it's good fun. And this is why I like doing what I do. I'm always learning about whiskey. It's why I hate people saying I'm an expert or a specialist. Like I'm an enthusiast, just like everyone else is. I enjoy doing it and I have fun doing it and I like to learn.
I am not a fan of anyone describing themselves or anyone else as an expert. I really don't think, unless you're Dave Broom, Charles McLean, Finan O'Connor.
Did I get it?
I think you can. Like, those guys are experts. They're literally paid to write out the history.
Still learning though, right? And I'm sure Dave and Charlie will be about that. You were always learning, and I think as soon as you put a specialist into something, it kind of shies people away. And I just don't like titles like that, man. I think that's a bit arsey, and that's not my game. I'd like to think I'm quite a humble guy and accepting of a lot of people, and I don't like getting put these big titles like, global brand ambassador. I'm just a Grants guy. I tell people I'm just a guy that likes whiskey, knows quite a bit about whiskey, and would love to talk to you about it and educate you and learn from you as well. So, yeah, I don't like that kind of title stuff.
That's the best stuff. To anyone I missed out there, whatever. Those are the three big names in whiskey as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, there's a lot of big names, but yeah.
There's a lot of people in whiskey nowadays. Anyway, that completes the quiz round.
Cool.
Now we move on to the anagrams, which are honestly my favorite part.
Cool.
I fucking love anagrams, mate. I've been on lockdown for a long time. I have very little to do except make anagrams.
You sad bastards. Okay, let's do this.
All right. Your first anagram, I will tell you, this is a distillery in Scotland. And the anagram is...
It's Glenfiddich. No.
Finch.
I think it's Glenfiddich. It's Glenfiddich.
All right, yeah. Yeah, you got that. It's
Sorry, but that looked like you put so much effort into that as well. You done a wee whiskey bottle and you draw it all up. Yeah. That was just like...
That's a hip flask.
So you have. You've done the whole thing. I'm intrigued about these anagrams. Hopefully I can pull myself back out of... Fucking cup and man, oh my god.
That hip flask, I can't draw for shit. So that hip flask is actually modeled off. That's traced off a hip flask my partner got for me. Initially, it was a bottle from Hero Distillery in Finland, but then that rubbed off when I was drunk. So I switched it to be a hip flask. And because I think a hip flask is a great thing in whiskey.
Yeah, fucking right, man. Portable whiskey, can't beat it.
All right. Your next anagram is Vile Bean.
Vile
Danny
Bean. It's a Scottish distillery, yeah?
Scottish distillery.
Oh, that's annoying. That's a really good anagram. I don't know why that's fucking me up as much as it is. It's only a few. Balvenie. What am I talking about? It's fucking Balvenie. Jesus Christ.
See, this is the thing, because Balvenie is correct. That is Balvenie Distillery.
Yeah.
I remember that you were actually really good at anagrams.
Yeah, I was actually
That
good at
came
that.
up. I don't remember where that came up, but I remember
We were-
that you're good at anagrams.
we were doing a quiz. I think it was an SNWS, and we do a few quizzes. My head is weird. I can. It just works. I've done there was a whole section on this quiz we've done. It was about 20 different distilleries, and I just looked at it, and like my head just makes the words not. I don't know how to explain it. It's weird. Anagrams just work in my head for some weird reason. I didn't want to say that before we did this in case it absolutely bombed, but now that I've got 2 right in a row, I've got that like false confidence that alcohol and getting 2 questions right in a row gives you. But yeah, I do quite like. I think it's a cool thing. Anagrams. I used to watch Countdown, man, and know how the bit in Countdown where they have the wee pause halfway through, and then they would tell you something. I loved that, so I'd write it down in a wee circle, and then each time I'd be like, it's that. So I loved the big conundrum one at the end, where it was the God, I'm a sad, strange wee guy, but I just thought that's what I enjoyed. So yeah, I quite like this.
I liked 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown.
Oh, amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I can beat them at Countdown. I can't beat the Countdown.
Some of these people are just like the mass and stuff, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy.
Oh, wait. All right. Anagram number 3.
Kinenvy.
Yeah. Kinenvy is correct.
Sorry, man, you've done so well with these anagrams as well. If anyone needs anyone to be like an anagram quiz helper, like I'm actually in Sweden right now, but you just FaceTime me and I'll help you out.
No, got crushed. I don't care. It makes it fun. It's better than you sitting there for 5 minutes on each anagram.
Yeah, exactly right. They usually put a time limit on this shit. People are like, oh, I don't know, I'll get there. You can just put it into, there's an app on your phone that you can put an anagram into and it just de-scrambles it. But I wonder if it would work for distilleries. Probably not.
Maybe.
I used to use it.
No.
With friends, and you can put in a bunch of letters. Yeah, the Google will just let you know.
Anyway,
what's this next one?
Your next anagram is Say Labia.
Say Labia is a fucking brilliant anagram. That's Isla Bay.
Danny Dyer.
Ilsa Bay, Ilsa Bay, that is.
Yes.
Yeah. What a brilliant.
No, that is correct. Anagram. Ilsa Bay is an anagram of Say Labia. There have been some anagrams that I've done previously on this channel that I've not put up because they have been too rude, even for this.
It's me. I'm literally telling you about fornicating with my 16-year-old self, fornicating in a golf pitch.
Well, it's not that.
Of course.
If they're owned by a large body, I don't really mind. But if they're independent guys, I don't want to put it up. There is one distillery in England, and I will message this to you later. There's one distillery.
Yeah, message me later.
Yeah, in southern England, there's one distillery where I didn't put up an anagram because it was. I love those guys, and it was a bit too rude.
Do you remember? And before I say this, a caveat, which is a brilliant marketing term that I've learned from doing my job. The word caveat, I hate it but love it both at the same time. Is the Botanist Distillery on Islay makes an amazing gin, and their bottle used to be a sort of a square, a flattened square bottle. Great stories around that distillery, but their new bottle has all the different foraged ingredients on the side of it, and one of them, if you look at it properly, says the word pubes on it. It's an old thing we used to laugh about in the SNWS. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's nothing against that distillery, or the gin's amazing. It's a fucking great gin, but it's just funny when you look at it and you're like, it says pubes. That just reminded me of that story.
No.
Again, I do.
I got one for you there. There's an Irish distillery. I won't name the distillery, but they changed from coloured labels to clear labels, but they had their name in gold. And it just so happened that when you picked up a bottle, the way your hand cradled the bottle, you pick it up, and all you could see was the word arse.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love that stuff. I love that because it's clearly not been tested, you know, and you're like, either you've looked at it and went, okay, we'll just stick with it, we're too far in, but that's brilliant. I think it's great.
It was great. My mum was like, who did they pay for this marketing? Because I would have taken that and said to you, this bottle just says art. Or selling art.
So good.
That's all it is. Fuck me up. All right. Your final anagram.
Final anagram.
And
okay.
This is not a distillery. This is a Scottish whiskey. This is a whiskey company.
A whiskey company. As in, like, William Grants is a whiskey company. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Twill a sandman's groin.
Twill a sandman's groin. I'm actually just going through whiskey companies that I know.
Yeah. By the way, Gascoigne Nick, you got the last one. If you're still here, Gascoigne Nick got Isla Bay.
Ah, good on him. So I don't see any of the comments or anything. It's a company. God, that's a long name. Oh, look, I just saw his little post come up there. That was brand new. It's first post. So we should do this again. Try and get more people in and get the old banter going. Sorry. This is a whiskey company. No, I can't see a Scottish whiskey company. There's so many different whiskey companies. Oh God, I think you might have stumped me there, man. And I don't want to take too much of your time. It's a long one.
You would be most recently familiar with this company. This company here.
William Grants and Sons. That's what it's William Grants and Sons. Yeah, it's William fucking Grants and Sons. Jesus, that's a great. I was like, what is so long? Because I said William Grants at the start. I was like, what is so long that it's going to be that long? William Grants and Sons. I was like, Diageo, Chevy, Suntory, Gordon MacPhail. Of course, it's fucking William Grants and Sons. Amazing. I think if we do this again, which I'd love to do, by the way, if that's okay for listeners and your fucking sanity.
Say that again.
If we do this again, which I would love to do, if that's okay for your sanity and your listeners and people do enjoy this, because I'll put this on my YouTube, I'll put it on my Facebook and stuff. We can see it if people actually care about this. Like, not so much your thing, but me talking shit. I'd love to do the anagram thing again because I like it, and also challenge me on those whiskey questions. I had a lot of fun doing that. That was a little bit nervous at first, but it was good fun, especially the JFK thing. I should have just said JFK, but I thought Ronald Reagan was a much funnier answer.
No, but I could imagine Reagan actually doing that.
100%.
By all means, we'll definitely do this again.
Yeah, I think we should. It's been good crack, man.
So, but when we do it again, I will have the same style of questions. I will get more difficult anagrams, and I went with Scotland this time. Next time, I might go south or west, and introduce something else. But no, I will tell you, you got, 8 or 9 out of 10. This puts you in the top 5 percentile. I have not made a leaderboard about this. I probably should.
Hey, you should, man. Of course you should.
Well, the main thing is, all right, so the two people I think are doing better than you. One is Billy Abbott from the Whiskey Exchange.
Yeah.
Billy got every single question and every anagram because Billy's Billy. He knows everything.
Good guy.
Oh yeah. And the other one is Dave Worthington of
Worthington.
That boutique whiskey.
Yeah, he's amazing. That guy's one of my favourites when it comes to, like, I just think that guy's actually brand new. Like, if you don't know, you should check out That Boutique Whiskey Company. Like, he's done it right. The visuals, the chat, the liquid, like, he's just brand new. The guy's amazing. So definitely check out That Boutique Whiskey Company.
I was in Belgium a few months ago, and I bought a bottle of 27-year-old North British single grain from That Boutique Whiskey Company for, I think it was €60.
That sounds about right. The guy, I don't know how he makes any money. Like, the stuff they do is incredibly good and incredibly affordable at the same time. It's great stuff.
Anyway, one more question for you.
Go for it.
It's a very simple one. Where can we see more of Danny Dyer and hear about you and your whiskey, your mixology, and about your travels in Sweden.
Yeah.
If we want to hear
Look, just get me on Facebook. I am literally Daniel Dyer on Facebook, or hit me up on Instagram. That is the main channel that I use, which is Danny Dyer. I've just started a YouTube channel, but it's fledgling, it's new, it's young, it's Dan the Whiskey Man. But don't worry, on Instagram, hit me up, Danny Dyer, and you'll find out most about what I'm doing, what I'm up to, all things about Grants, and lots of other interesting weird things, like almost stepping on a poisonous snake today, making some vanilla buns, and getting so drunk that I'm about to go and have food with my girlfriend's mum and dad, and I'll probably make an absolute tit myself.
I want to point out one thing there. It was probably a venomous snake. Now, this is my Australian...
It was a venomous snake. It was the only venomous snake they have in Sweden, because I said, that has diamonds on its back, just like the adder has in Scotland, and Angelica, my girlfriend, said, that's the venomous one. I went, I'm glad I didn't step on it, because it was that size. The other one we saw was fucking huge, way, way, way big, and I was like, that's a snake, it's fine, it's a water snake. But the one I almost stood on was a very tiny venomous snake. Yeah.
To anyone who is watching, if something is... Sorry, this is my Australian background coming out. If something is poisonous, you need to ingest it. If it's venomous, don't let it bite or touch you. That is a huge thing. I can't stress that enough. It's very important.
Yeah. I luckily didn't get hit by the snake, so I was sorted. But man, thank you so much.
Yeah, happy you didn't get bitten by the snake.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy. I get bit by mosquitoes and all sorts. But dude, this has been brand new. I've had a great time. Hopefully, I wish everyone else was as happy as I was with alcohol, but they're not. And I'll cope with that. I'll go down and have some dinner with their family, because I'm already a half hour too late, so I'll need to apologise. But it was worth it, man. It was a lot of good fun. It was good to see you again and catch up on a lot of stuff.
It was great to see you again. To everyone who tuned in now and who's tuning in later, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you follow Danny on Facebook, on Instagram. Buy yourself a bottle of Grants and enjoy it, because, as he says, they are really fucking good. And then, yeah, tune in next time for another Malts with Mates. But to all who watch, cheers, everyone.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
We'll see you next time.